So imagine being forced to pay a union that you don't like and you don't want. Now, most public school teachers have to pay some mandatory dues, some of which is used to lobby against their own interests. And now a group of teachers in California is suing to stop being forced to pay the dues, as much as $1,000 a year. And Steve, you say we should all hope they win. Why?
Because you shouldn't have to pay something that you don't like unless it's taxes, and even those I think you should oppose, at least legally. And in terms of dues, as you say, it's up to $1,000 a year. It is mandatory. They should have an opt-in choice. That is, if you think the union is doing good things in terms of backing political candidates, you'll put up your money. But most teachers, I think, when they have the choice, like to keep their own money that they earned.
Rick, that makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, and guess what? That's already the law. That's not what this is about. Every single member of that union has the right to opt out what they're paying for political dues. It's the law. It's clear. What this is about is trying to give them the right to opt out of all their dues. And what it's really about
is... what's wrong with that?
Hang on. It's about the sour grapes that happened. They put this on the ballot in California at the last election, and guess what? The people of California said no, it's not right. People in unions should not get something for nothing. The union represents them. They should have to pay something, not for their political activities.
Emac, I was a teacher for a while, and I didn't know all the stuff that my union was voting in favor of, and not only in favor of and encouraging teachers to, but lobbying, using our union dues to lobby for these things.
Yeah, more than 95%. I think 97% of union dues goes toward Democrat causes. Look at those numbers. It's stunning. When about 49%, about half of teachers are Republicans or independents. And I'll tell you something. When teachers stand up and say no, that's when you see what's really going on with teachers. Though the union dues goes toward Board of Education junkets for supervisors. It goes to campaign activities for things teachers don't want, like voter fraud in California, things like that. And I'll tell you something. What kind of country do we live in when there are state laws called paycheck protection laws, where teachers have to get protection from unions and the automatic deduction of dues that are spent on things they don't want? Seems like we shouldn't
have to spell out. And Sabrina's teachers are standing up, and they're making, frankly, very reasonable cases. Here's what one teacher said about this. The unions are free to push whatever agenda they please, but I have a problem with them taking my money to push an agenda with which I do not agree. That makes sense.
Yeah, I'm so proud of my home state. Look, all teachers, like women or other demographics, are not all cut from the same cloth, right? We have different values and interests and political leanings, and that's a good thing. But they shouldn't be coerced into having to support candidates or issues that they don't agree with. And of course, look, there's teachers out there who have said, look, I believe in expanding educational freedom, and the union is giving money to Democrats who will do everything in their power to squash that opportunity or to sustain, unsustainable benefits that are going to bankrupt my state. So there's a lot of realistic...
Hold on a second. Rich Karlgaard is actually out there in California. Rich, what do the people think? I mean, don't these demands sound reasonable?
Where I live in Silicon Valley, most voters are Democrats, but they're very, meritocratic, and they build these great companies. And I can't find a single Democratic friend who believes in teachers' unions. Because America has fallen so far in math and science relative to every other country in the world. So I think I think we're on the cusp of a revolution out here, and it may start, as revolutions often do, in California from an unexpected place.
We remember Jarvis, Proposition 3. Even Reagan said the Reagan Revolution started in California. Bill Bob, what about the larger issue? Rick sort of hinted at it, the fact that you cannot be a public school teacher in California without being a member of the union. Shouldn't that change?
Listen, I don't think that somebody represented by a union should be compelled to pay for politicking. I do think they should be compelled to pay for bargaining. To say otherwise is to allow freeloading. I don't like open shops. It would be like me saying, because I'm a Republican and I voted against your property tax increase, I can opt out of property taxes. No, that's not fair. Rick Unger's right about this.
Well, but Steve, I don't think Rick Unger's necessarily right about this. I think that individuals should have the right. It is kind of shocking, Rick. But I think individuals should have the right to join or not.
That's right. And the opt-in, why not have opt-in? Let the union make the case. We're using your money well. And if people aren't convinced by it, then they should be able to withdraw. After all, this is supposed to be, once upon a time, a voluntary association. This is not like living in town. Taxes you have to pay, dues you should not.
Right, and collective bargaining with whom? The taxpayers whose property taxes are going toward... I get it. We want teachers to be paid well. I'm all for that, and also cops and firemen. But we got to be realistic about what's going on.
Okay, Rick wants to... Hold on a second. I'm going to give Rick the last word. He's holding up one side of this. But Rick, I got to say that all across the country, more and more states are going for the right to work, where you have the right to choose to join a union or not, where it's not mandatory.
You're absolutely right, and that would probably be the result in California if this lawsuit succeeded. I just want to point out, though, if you have to make your argument, as many of you are, basing this on political contributions, it's misleading. This lawsuit is not about political contributions.
It's union junk.
already have a lot
in Vegas and stuff like that.
Rick, you got the last word. I heard you last, Rick, although we did hear you chime in as well.
Last word.
All right. We predicted it 3 weeks ago right here, folks. Well, now the White House is confirming it, and that could mean we'll all be paying for it soon. More on this is going to happen. Just 3 weeks ago, right here, you heard it here first, that President Obama hired John Podesta to push through a plan that he outlined bypass Congress and start using executive powers to push through his agenda. And this week, the president is confirming it.
We are not just going to be waiting for legislation in order to make sure that we're providing Americans the kind of help that they need. I can use that pen to sign executive orders and take executive actions and administrative actions.
Well, Steve, here is the blueprint right in my hands. We saw this coming way back in 2010.
Yeah, why have a constitution if Congress doesn't do what you want them to do? Just bypass it and issue an executive order. We used to call that a dictatorship, and I think the courts are waking up to it. Looks like the Supreme Court's going to knock down what they did with those recess appointments to the National Labor Relations Board, and I think other courts are waking up. We have checks and balances. I don't mean on the fiscal side, but in terms of political power, and the courts are finally waking up to the threat.
Rick, of course, other presidents have used executive orders to do things, but the tweaking of things like Obamacare, we just saw another tweak this week of Obamacare through executive order. That's kind of new stuff, isn't it? Isn't it scary?
Well, look, you have to expect, when you have a situation we're in now where we just can't get Congress to do much of anything, presidents are always going to turn to executive power, and there's always going to be people who don't like what he's doing who are going to react as Steve reacted, and I get it. But the fact is, somebody has to do something to get certain things moving in this country, and I got to tell you, you look what the president came up with this week, his Jack Kemp-like enterprise zone plan. That's a great way to use it. Don't you agree?
We might agree on some things, but Sabrina, the fact is, you talk about the country needing it. Do we really need this move to reduce greenhouse gas pollution by 17% by 2020? That's one of the things he may do by executive order.
Right, he's so confused. Look, the fact is that I don't think that this is a good way to create policy, but there are things, especially in that energy domain, that I think the president could use executive order to help the economy. For instance, he could allow for more, through an executive order, more offshore drilling in both the Atlantic and the Pacific. There's an argument to be made that he could permit the Keystone pipeline through an executive order.
All right, I'm sorry to cut you off, but we got to move it along. Mike, the fact is that these are contentious issues. It's true, if it was just blocked for politics' sake, it'd be one thing, but these are issues upon which people disagree.
I like to compare the executive orders that Ronald Reagan gave with those that President Obama has given. Reagan used executive orders to diminish government power and give it to the citizens. President Obama has done the opposite.
Bill, quick.
Well, I think that you could use executive orders in a positive way. Just one way that Obama could do something good to loosen up the job market. What if he declared that the federal government's going to be colorblind? No more quotas. No more disparate impact laws.
I don't think that's going to happen. Very quickly, John Tamney.
Well, unlike Rick, I'm happiest when Washington is doing nothing. And beyond that, it's investors who create jobs. They like certainty. Obama acting unilaterally will create uncertainty, and that will hurt job creation.
Last word from our libertarian. Well, is the president's agenda